Welcome to Future Talk. On today's program, we're going to discuss big data. It's a term that refers to the collection of very large quantities of digital information and the use of powerful analytic tools to detect deep trends and patterns in that data that would otherwise be invisible. It has huge potential benefits, but also some very serious risks. I have two guests. Dave Nielsen is a technical program manager in the Big Data Technologies Group at Intel Corporation. He's also the co-founder of CloudCamp, an organization that helps educate professionals about cloud computing. Bhairav Mehta is a senior data scientist and technical program manager at Apple, where he specializes in data analytics, data science, and big data. Gentlemen, welcome both of you to the program today. Dave, let's start with you. What exactly are we talking about when we talk about big data?
Well, it really depends on who you ask and when you're asking, but I think right now when we're talking about big data, we're talking about data that's been generated not just by people but also by machines. And what I mean by that is that individuals, when we create data, we're actually not creating that much data. And we can put that in a database and we can look at it and understand it pretty reasonably. But when all these machines and devices that we have are creating data, it creates a tsunami of data. And understanding what that data is telling us is quite complicated. And that's really what I think is meant by big data today.
Can you give an example of the type of data you're talking about?
Yeah, just think of all of the devices that you carry with you or are in your possession. And as you move around, one type of big data would be location data.
Like your phone?
Like your phone, yeah, especially your phone, but it could be your laptop, it could be your car, it could be anything that is sending a signal or sharing data. A lot of machines that don't move also share data. And all of this data is logs of information that then can be used to predict the future or tell trends, that kind of thing.
Now, what are some of the practical applications of this? Who would use this big data and what would they use it for?
Well, going back to the location data, a good example would be traffic data. Where should we be spending our money on infrastructure to build new freeways or repair roads, that kind of thing. We can predict trends of where people are driving, where they will drive in the future based on where they've driven in the past. And it's not an easy calculation. And so we use big data techniques to help us kind of divine what the data is telling us.
So you can see patterns that you can't see through any other means? Things would suddenly stand out to you?
Right, because a typical database that we've used in the past would have rows and columns, and you'd run a query, and if you were lucky, it would return some results within a reasonable amount of time, and it might tell you some information, but you wouldn't really be able to predict unpredictable things that way.
Now, Bhairav, I understand that big data can be used to predict people. In other words, you catalog people's facial expressions and you find out that certain types of facial expressions are linked to certain types of behavior. Mm-hmm. What are the potential implications of that type of technology? Like at airports, for example, you know who's going to hijack the plane by the way they're conducting themselves? I mean,
Yeah, so these days we are being recorded everywhere we go, right? So when you're looking at the facial expression of people and you are trying to predict the sentiment or their activity, right? When you're trying to do that, usually what happens is sometimes there are false positives and false negatives, and you have to be very careful about that, right? So and the information that's being collected is usually, and the prediction usually happens through training. So they train the algorithms over millions and millions of images, and that usually gives you the output of, okay, what that particular facial expression means, and predictions that goes along with that.
So it's not just the data, but the analytic tools, and somebody has to write these tools to correlate the data and figure out what it all means. What are some of the most important areas in big data right now, like that is generating the most excitement, Dave?
Yeah, well, the group that I work within at Intel is actually called the Big DL project, and it stands for Big Deep Learning. And so deep learning is actually an area that is receiving a tremendous amount of interest these days. And the main reason is because, like Bhairav mentions, you can actually take lots and lots of images or video or audio, and you can now process that to identify patterns, objects, sounds. You know, what was the sound? Who is this person in the video or the photo? You know, is it a cat or a dog? Is it a house, or what's going on? All in video and photos that we just haven't had the capability of doing before.
So deep learning, is that where the computer learns by experience? When it gets more input, it catalogs it somewhere and then it knows where to retrieve it?
Well, yeah, actually what's really exciting about it is, in fact, you're seeing a lot of investment in computer vision, where like self-driving cars now. And what's happening, it's amazing really, they're taking thousands or even millions of hours of video from the cars driving, and they're actually looking at every single pixel in all of those frames and using all of that information to start to recognize patterns that we just have never had the opportunity to look at before, because the amount of information and pixels that they're looking through is incredible. But now with the power of the latest processors and software techniques, we are actually able to do that in real time.
Another possible area of big data is climate change, because sometimes you might see a symptom and it might be 10 years before you feel the effect. So how might big data be used to assist climatologists looking at the big picture of what's happening in our environment, Bhairav?
Yeah, so we have been collecting a lot of rich information from our satellite imaging and other sensors that are out there put around the world, and this very rich information can be used to predict any catastrophic climate events. At the same time, applying deep learning algorithms and other big data technologies, you can pretty much predict some of the benefits or drawbacks of a given change in climate policy, or some big event that may happen in future that may impact how the resultant climate change will take place. So.
Now, is this all a totally positive thing? We gain more knowledge, we have a more comprehensive view of the world. Is that always good, or can there ever be such a thing as too much knowledge, like some things we'd be better off not knowing?
Yeah, so I always wonder about the information that's being collected by some technology ivory towers of Silicon Valley, and many times it's quite intrusive. At the same time, the benefits of big data is there, but at the same time, the privacy is being bartered with the benefits, right? So a lot of individuals get offended when their privacy is being intruded, and essentially you are showcasing everything you do and everything you're going to do up in the public, and there is a big drawback of that.
Now, do you think that privacy should be a right, or is it just something that's nice to have if you can get it, but if you can't get it, too bad? You can't be allowed to get in the way of scientific progress. Dave?
Well, that's a real challenge, because I think our privacy is being invaded, but we're also receiving many more benefits. Think about, here we feel like we're losing some rights, but at the same time we're gaining so much opportunity. With before the web, there were so many freedoms we didn't have. Freedom to find out information, to meet people, to talk to people, to communicate, that now we do have. So I do believe that, yes, maybe we're losing some freedoms, like freedom of certain types of privacy, but the benefit is that we're getting so many additional freedoms.
Yeah, so that really arises the question of blockchain technology. So blockchain technology essentially is helping making all the transactions and all the exchange that you do online and through different media anonymous. And at the same time, big data is helping blockchain technology really prosper.
And just to clarify, blockchain technology is the technology between Bitcoin
Right.
and other types of cryptocurrencies.
Right. So we are moving to a connected world where everything will be connected to each other. Right now, most of the services and technology that we have access to usually through smartphone and smart devices. But 10 years from today, we'll have everything connected. We are looking at Internet of Things. And at that time, blockchain technology will really help doing transactions between systems that are connected.
Well, blockchain is a good example of a type of technology that has benefits and also some significant drawbacks.
Yes.
You know, as we're seeing right now, in fact, today, this week, I think we've had what amounts to ransomware, where there's little worms of software that can spread themselves without even a human being involved, and it can infect your computer. It can delete or encrypt your own data so you can't get access to it. And right now, this is spread all over the world in, I think, like 90 countries.
Yes.
And so very significant governments and Fortune or Global 2000 companies right now are actually paying millions of dollars because their data has been encrypted and now their business is being impacted. And the way in which these folks are collecting the money is through Bitcoin, because it can't be traced.
Yes,
so that's one dramatic negative about these new technologies, is that Bitcoin is really the only way to collect that money.
Right.
And can Bitcoin itself be hacked, or is that
Yes.
hermetically sealed?
Yes, there have been occasions where Bitcoin network has been forked by, for good or bad reason. They have been forked, and and that really it hampers the progress of blockchain technology, because when you have big forks in Ethereum or Bitcoin networks, you're going to have the rules changed, because the more powerful party that has more computing power, that has more resources with respect to energy, they are going to dictate on how Bitcoin's rules are designed and consensus is built.
So is this a conflict between the good guys and the bad guys? The good guys who want to keep computing open and safe and free for all, and the bad guys who want to abuse it for their own personal gain and profit, regardless of the effect on others?
Well, I think that's one of the problems we have, is that there's so much power and so much technology now that there's easy opportunity to take advantage of these technologies for nefarious reasons. And unfortunately, you can't have one without the other. There's too much good, and so therefore we're not going to stop using it. But then there's enough people out there who are going to take advantage of the dark corners of the web with this technology. And again, like the cat's out of the bag, the horse has left the barn. You know, we can't get it back.
Something that scares people is migratory patterns, movement of people from one place to another, the conditions of life of bad over here, people looking for some place to go. We don't really have a good top-down picture of that. If we had a good top-down picture, maybe we could deal with those issues. Maybe it would scare people and say, whoa, we're being overrun here. You know, I mean,
hopefully we can stop it before it gets to that, right? Before the people start getting into a situation where you know, they have to leave to feed themselves or to save their lives. You know, maybe we can use that same technology you're talking about to actually see that some group is harming them and prevent that from happening in the first place.
Right. So to that point, we always see this data of refugees going into different countries. At the same time, the migratory patterns, depending on the events that are happening around the world. One way it's beneficial to the people who are impacted, because they get to be identified, and the issue is up in the public that this is a big issue that's happening. They can raise awareness about that. At the same time, there's the other side of the coin where there's apprehension.
Yeah, I think it was a while ago, George Clooney, I think, was involved in a project where they got some satellites to shine the cameras on top of countries that hadn't really been seen before, and I think it wrinkled, rustled some feathers there. So, but I think that was for a good purpose, to let the world know what's happening in some of these countries.
Because here in Silicon Valley, we live in a little bubble. There's a good standard of living, and things are pretty good. In other parts of the world, conditions are not very good. Now, are people who are comfortable, do they want to know about the people who are not comfortable, or they'd rather not know what's going on the other side of that fence? And does big data make it impossible not to know what's going on?
Well, I think it's all of the above. I mean, some people like their bubble and they'll live in their bubble, but I do know that plenty of people here in Silicon Valley, they've had some success. They feel like they're lucky, and now they're looking to find ways in which they can give back. So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, I would say that really helps in equalizing to an extent. We try to see that, okay, what part of the world needs resources or needs help, and there are individuals like philanthropists and others who are really forthcoming in helping. Without knowing what's going on, there's no way even the good intentioned people are going to go and help out. Right.
I understand there's also a lot of implications for healthcare in big data. What sort of things can we achieve in healthcare by having a massive amount of data where we can find patterns pertaining to health?
Well, one story I was going to bring up earlier is you know, the amount of information out there is great because we can make new discoveries. At the same time, you also have to be careful because you know, companies are watching your habits. They are looking at your buying patterns. And I remember this story from a few years ago where some father received some mail from a store implying that, hey, you should buy this baby formula because you're having a baby. And he was very annoyed because, you know, why are you sending my young daughter this information about having a baby? And you know, you're giving her ideas, right? Well, and he complained, and then it wasn't too long after that when his daughter said, "Dad, I'm pregnant." And so the department store was able to determine that based on the vitamins and other things that she had been buying. So yeah, the information's out there, and while they're able to help you, even maybe give you information even when you're not ready for it, on the other end, sometimes they're able to help find cures for you that you wouldn't have found otherwise. So again, we're going to take the good with the bad, and there are many goods, many positives.
I think there are cases where a person goes to a doctor with very rare symptoms. The doctor has never seen these symptoms, but with big data, he can find the 5 other cases in history where these symptoms have appeared and find out how those cases resolved and maybe apply it to this person.
Right. So, I mean, especially I've been working with a lot of fine engineers from General Electric, especially in radiology and pathology side. They are collecting massive amount of information from the pathology slides and the X-rays they have collected over time, and they are able to mine that information and build deep learning models to diagnose a given type of tumor or disease that they were not able to see before without trained eyes. So
they can also detect disease. A machine can diagnose an illness you might have just by looking at you better than a doctor can in some cases.
Right, and there's been a lot of effort recently put on while you're having a doctor visit for anything. It could be routine, it could be you know, you stub your toe, it really could be anything. While you're there, they can do an analytics of all of your symptoms, all of the other data, including your blood pressure, that kind of thing, to actually try to predict what the next ailment you will have, and then while you're there at the doctor, perhaps consult you on that so that you perhaps can head that off. So we should see that helping quite a few people.
So do you think this will revolutionize healthcare and finally drive down the costs a bit?
Yeah, I mean, we are wearing all these wearable devices, and a smartphone, it's tracking, your wearable devices are tracking your heartbeat, and in future probably glucose levels and other vitals, and the corpuscle counts and so on, and it's a real-time measurement. So it's going to be able to predict the ailments that you may have in future, and all the genetic mapping that's happening with companies like 23andMe and others that really helping in mapping your gene at the same time, and marrying all this information together can really come up with golden nuggets of information about your health.
Yeah, I think we're actually going to end up going in a very strange direction for the next few years. There's
Yes.
the possibilities are wild, and so before we actually get to the point where we're lowering our healthcare costs, I think we're going to see a lot of investment in a wide range of technologies. For example, there's a technology out there called CRISPR. Have you heard of CRISPR?
Yes.
It's a wild thing because it gives gene editing tools to people really not very different from you or I. Of course, you have to have the additional resources, but you can actually edit somebody's DNA, and not only do that, you can then force those changes in the DNA to all of their offspring, which this isn't just for humans, this is for all sorts of creatures. You can even make new creatures. It's bizarre. Now, there's a lot of opportunity there to help snip out the DNA that's causing ailments. But DNA is not that simple. You can't just point to that particular molecule or chain and cut it out. So they actually are using big data and machine learning to predict what the impact will be on your health if they make cuts or replacements in your DNA. So they're going to use big data to do that. They're going to use deep learning, machine learning. Some people call this wild, crazy, exotic science, and it is. But it's incredibly powerful, and I think we will see some lives changed because of it.
Now, does this create any serious ethical dilemmas? For example, let's say they use deep data, big data to examine your genome and determine that you're probably not going to live past the age of 5.
Right.
Should we make a decision, well, we don't want to spend a lot of resources on you because we know there's no hope for you, and then you get into the value of what is a human life worth and preserving it?
Yeah, I mean, the only way I can answer that is that I personally like having the knowledge. I would like to know if my child wasn't going to live long, simply because we can make some decisions to perhaps make that life better while he or she were here. But it certainly can be abused, so we need to be protective of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very helpful to have this wealth of information. If you are not able to save your own child, like what you just gave an example of, at least you can help maybe a million other kids survive because of the research that can be done on this particular ailment, right? So that would be very beneficial, I would say.
I guess ultimately it comes down to what is technology for? Is it to work for the benefit of the human species or for individual humans? Because what's good for individual humans is not necessarily what's good for the species and vice versa. So it sounds like we might be confronting some very thorny questions, and the technology itself may not really give us a clue as to how we should answer those type of questions.
Right. So I always think about technology as a beacon of light. It's always giving us a direction on where we would want to go. But to follow that direction or not, it's upon the choice of human species. Right.
Now, one of the more mundane aspects of big data is commercial advertising, going from deep philosophy of life to selling stuff. How important is that becoming when big data can be used to predict what you're likely to buy next, and ads can be targeted to you? Some people are very annoyed when Amazon says, based on your preferences, we think you would like this book next. Maybe other people welcome that. But is it basically intrusive? I mean, is that a good trend that should be encouraged?
I always laugh at that because I think if they're getting really good at predicting what you should buy, maybe your life needs a little more variety.
Maybe you're too predictable.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it can be helpful too, because if you see, like, if you track down your supermarket visits of last 2 years, you kind of buy predictable stuff. So if they can take care of that for me, it would be very, very good that I'm not wasting my time driving to the supermarket, buying the same thing every day. Instead, somebody is ready to ship it to my door. At the same time, with the recommendation, I always feel that many times, almost 80% of time, it's incorrect about me. The recommendations are not correct.
They just have to tweak the technology a little bit more.
Right. I think they need more deeper understanding of choices to be able to make accurate predictions.
Now, do you think big data is really going to change our lives significantly so that the average person just feels it like, my life is totally different than it was before we have big data? I mean, is it really going to make that much of a personal difference to people? Or is it already?
Well, it already has. I mean, we see so many people addicted to their phones and all that data that they're sharing. But I kind of think that if it's up to you to decide, are you a result of the technology, or are you simply using the technology to do what you want? And in particular, I was saying that you may have heard Mark Andreessen, who said that software is eating the world. Well, when I think of that, I always think of software sort of like a wedge driving between jobs. And you've got jobs that are going above the wedge, and there are jobs that are going below the wedge. And the wedge really is the software. And so there's the people who are in the jobs above the wedge who are telling the software what to do, and there's those who are being told what to do by the software. I don't think you want a job where the software is telling you what to do. So that's where I think folks need to focus, is using data to get jobs that are informing the software what to do.
So it's sort of dividing into a caste system, people whose lives are controlled by software and those who are not?
I think that's happening.
And at the same time, the skills needed to succeed in these areas are changing almost daily on a weekly basis, right? There are new technologies coming out, and you need to get retrained. If you want to be part of on this side of the wedge, you really have to be well versed with technology, and to be able to retrain, relearn a lot of things that you have learned in the past.
And I think we're going to actually have to wrap it up right there, because I've just gotten the signal. I'd like to thank both of you for being here today, Dave Nielsen and Bhairav Mehta. Thank you for watching. Visit our website, www.futuretalk.net. For Future Talk, I'm Marty Wasserman, and we'll see you next time. So Mike's probably not off yet, so we can't talk.